The crisp December air carried the scent of pine and cinnamon, but for Michael, it only deepened the ache in his chest. Christmas, once his favorite time of year, now felt like a cruel reminder of what he'd lost. He was a kind man, always ready with a gentle word or a helping hand, but loneliness had become his constant companion since the divorce. He watched other families bustling about, their faces lit with holiday cheer, and a heavy sigh escaped him. His own little apartment, though cozy, felt empty without the joyful chaos that once filled his home during the festive season. He remembered Christmases past with Sarah, his ex-wife, and their daughter, Lily. The twinkle lights, the silly carols they'd belt out off-key, the shared laughter over burnt cookies, those memories were bittersweet. They were beautiful, but they belonged to a life that no longer existed. Now, he saw Lily on weekends, and while those moments were precious, they couldn't quite fill the void. He missed the everyday presence, the shared responsibilities, the quiet understanding that had once bound him and Sarah together. This year, the sadness felt particularly sharp. He tried to busy himself, decorating his small tree with ornaments Lily had made in kindergarten, each one a tiny echo of happier times. But even as he hung the glitter-covered stars and wobbly reindeer, a profound sense of melancholy settled over him. He yearned for the warmth of a complete family, for the easy camaraderie he'd once taken for granted. He knew he had to be strong for Lily, to make Christmas magical for her, but inside, his own spirit felt dim. The approaching holiday, with all its promises of joy and togetherness, only highlighted his solitude. He often found himself staring out the window, watching the snow fall, wishing for a miracle that would somehow mend the broken pieces of his life. He just wanted to feel whole again, to experience the genuine happiness that Christmas once brought. Despite his own heavy heart, Michael knew he had a duty to Lily. Her happiness was his top priority, especially during Christmas. He plastered on his best cheerful smile when she arrived that Saturday morning, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Daddy, can we go to the big market today? The one with the lights and the music?" she asked, bouncing on the balls of her feet. He had planned to take her, of course. It was an annual tradition, even after the divorce. Perhaps, he hoped, the sheer vibrancy of the Christmas market could, for a few hours, chase away his gloom. Maybe, just maybe, some of Lily's infectious joy would rub off on him. So, hand in hand, they ventured into the heart of the city, where the annual Christmas market was in full swing. The moment they stepped through the grand archway, Michael felt a subtle shift. The air was alive with the cheerful chatter of people, the distant carols from a brass band, and the delicious smells of roasted nuts and hot chocolate. Strings of twinkling lights crisscrossed above, turning the gray afternoon into a magical wonderland. Stalls brimmed with handmade ornaments, colorful scarves, and tempting treats. Lily's gasp of delight was music to his ears, a sound that always managed to pierce through his sadness. He watched her wide-eyed wonder as they passed a stall filled with wooden toys, then another displaying sparkling glass figurines. Her excitement was contagious, a tiny spark that started to flicker within him. He bought her a warm pretzel, dusted with cinnamon sugar, and a cup of steaming apple cider. Her rosy cheeks and happy grin were worth every penny, every effort. He found himself smiling genuinely as she pointed out a particularly fluffy Santa hat or giggled at a singing animatronic reindeer. For a little while, his own worries faded into the background, replaced by the simple pleasure of seeing his daughter so utterly content. He even found himself humming along to a familiar Christmas tune as they drifted deeper into the market, Lily pulling him eagerly from one interesting sight to the next. He bought her a small, brightly painted wooden bird, which she clutched tightly, already planning where it would hang on their tree. His spirits were indeed lifting, carried by the festive atmosphere and, more importantly, by Lily's pure, unadulterated joy. He felt a rare moment of peace, a quiet happiness that had been absent for too long. He had hoped the market would make her happy, but it was doing more than that, it was slowly, gently, warming his own lonely heart. Michael, lost in the simple delight of watching Lily choose a glittery snowflake ornament, felt a sudden jolt. It wasn't the chill in the air or the jostle of the crowd. It was something deeper, a familiar pull he hadn't felt in a long time. His gaze, almost as if guided by an invisible string, drifted over the heads of the market-goers. And there she was. Sarah. She stood near a stall selling intricate glass figures, her head tilted slightly as she examined a delicate angel. Her dark hair, now a little longer, framed her face, and a soft smile played on her lips as she spoke to the vendor. Michael's breath caught in his throat. The noise of the market seemed to fade, replaced by a sudden, ringing silence in his ears. He hadn't seen her like this, not in a casual setting, since before everything changed. Usually, their encounters were brief, strained exchanges during Lily's drop-offs or school events, always with an invisible wall between them. She looked good. Really good. A familiar wave of emotions washed over him, surprise, a flicker of old affection, and a pang of regret. He wondered if she had seen him. The market was so crowded, a swirling tapestry of faces and colors. He felt a strange mix of wanting to hide and wanting to call out her name. Just then, as if sensing his gaze, Sarah looked up. Her eyes, the same warm hazel ones he remembered so well, met his across the sea of people. Her smile faltered, replaced by an expression of pure astonishment. For a split second, they just stared at each other, two unexpected figures in a festive tableau. The surprise on her face mirrored his own. It was clear she hadn't anticipated this encounter any more than he had. The world seemed to hold its breath. The background buzz of the market came rushing back, but now it felt different, charged with an unspoken tension. He saw her lips part slightly, as if to speak, but no sound came out. The distance between them felt vast, yet their eyes were locked in a moment that stretched, pulling on threads of shared history. It was a reunion he hadn't planned, hadn't even dared to imagine, and it instantly shattered the fragile peace he had just begun to find in the festive chaos. Lily, oblivious, tugged at his sleeve, her little hand still clutching the wooden bird. The tension between Michael and Sarah hung thick in the air, a fragile bubble of unspoken history in the midst of the bustling market. But that bubble was about to burst, not with a bang, but with a joyful squeal. Lily, who had been patiently holding Michael's hand, suddenly looked up, following his gaze. Her eyes, sharper and less burdened than her father's, quickly spotted her mother. "Mommy," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the market noise like a tiny, joyful bell. Before Michael could even react, before he could utter a single warning, Lily let go of his hand and darted off. Her little legs, surprisingly fast, weaved through the crowd of shoppers and strollers. Michael watched, helpless and a little horrified, as his daughter made a beeline straight for Sarah. Sarah, still locked in that stunned stare with Michael, blinked, her focus suddenly shifting. Her face softened instantly, a genuine, radiant smile replacing her surprised expression as Lily launched herself into her arms. The embrace was fierce and loving, Lily's small arms wrapped tightly around her mother's neck. Michael saw Sarah bury her face in Lily's hair, a moment of pure, unadulterated motherly love. It was a sight that both warmed and twisted Michael's heart. As they pulled apart, Lily's bright eyes, innocent and full of unburdened curiosity, looked from her mother to her father, who was now slowly making his way towards them. "Mommy, Daddy," she chirped, her voice still brimming with excitement. "Look, we're all here. Just like when we went to the big park last summer." Then, her brow furrowed slightly, a small frown appearing on her perfect little face. She tilted her head, her gaze sweeping between her parents. "Why don't we all spend Christmas together, like before? Like we used to, with the tree and the special breakfast?" Her words, spoken with such simple honesty, landed like a gentle balm in the festive air. Michael felt a flush creep up his neck, his mind scrambling for an explanation. He could see the effect on Sarah too, her smile had frozen, and a faint blush colored her cheeks. Lily's question, so innocent and full of longing, was a direct hit to the unspoken awkwardness, stripping away any pretense or distance they might have tried to maintain. It was a question that demanded an answer, not just from them, but from the silent spaces between them. The joyous noise of the market seemed to recede once more, leaving only the echo of a child's heartfelt wish hanging in the crisp winter air. Lily's question hung in the air, innocent yet powerful, a tiny earthquake shaking the carefully constructed walls around Michael and Sarah. Michael finally reached them, his heart thumping a little harder than usual. He saw Sarah's eyes, still wide with a mix of surprise and a touch of something else he couldn't quite name. It was an old look, one he hadn't seen directed at him in years. Their eyes met again, this time at a much closer distance, and the awkwardness was palpable. No words were exchanged, but a whole conversation passed between them. A silent acknowledgement of Lily's poignant wish. A shared memory of all those Christmases past, filled with laughter and warmth that now felt like a distant dream. He remembered the smell of Sarah's favorite Christmas cookies baking, the way her hand felt in his as they strung lights, the quiet joy of watching Lily open presents on Christmas morning. For a fleeting moment, the market noise faded, and it was just the two of them, standing on the precipice of a shared past. He saw a flicker in her eyes, a tiny spark that hinted at something more than just politeness or surprise. Was it nostalgia? Regret? Or something else entirely, something akin to the feeling that had once drawn them together? He felt it too, a warmth spreading through his chest that wasn't from the hot chocolate. It was a familiar feeling, one he buried deep, thinking it was gone forever. Sarah's gaze held his for a beat longer than strictly necessary, and in that shared moment, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift occurred. The hard edges of their separation seemed to soften, if only for an instant. Lily, oblivious to the silent communication, looked up at them expectantly, her innocent face a beacon of hope. Her question had cracked open a door neither of them had intended to revisit, revealing a glimpse of what used to be, and perhaps, what still could be. The air between them, though still charged with unspoken feelings, was no longer just awkward, it was meaningful, hinting at a connection that stubbornly refused to be severed completely. It was a fragile spark, almost extinguished, but now fanned by a child's simple wish, it glowed faintly once more. The awkward silence stretched, punctuated only by Lily's expectant gaze. Sarah was the first to break it, offering Michael a small, almost hesitant smile. "It's a beautiful market, isn't it?" she said, her voice a little softer than he remembered. Michael nodded, still trying to process the sudden shift in their interaction. "It really is," he managed, glancing around at the festive stalls. "Lily was just showing me her new wooden bird." Lily, seizing the opportunity, proudly held up her purchase. "Mommy, look! Daddy got it for me." Seeing Lily's obvious happiness at having both her parents present, a silent agreement passed between Michael and Sarah. For Lily's sake, they would put their past differences aside, at least for now. "Would you like to walk around with us for a bit, Sarah?" Michael asked, trying to sound casual, his heart still doing a little flutter. Sarah hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting around the crowd as if looking for an escape route, then back to Lily's beaming face. "I suppose so," she said, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "I was just looking for a new ornament for my tree." And so, a new, tentative trio formed. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, skipped ahead, pulling them both towards a stall selling candied apples. Michael and Sarah walked a little apart, a respectful distance maintained, yet closer than they had been in years. Their conversation was light, almost painfully so. They spoke about the weather, the crowds, the various crafts on display. "Did you see those little ceramic houses? They're quite charming," Sarah remarked, pointing to a stall. "Yes, they are," Michael replied, trying to keep his voice even. "Lily loves the ones with the tiny lights inside." They carefully avoided any mention of their shared history, their divorce, or the difficult years that followed. It was like walking on thin ice, each step measured, each word chosen with caution. Yet, even in this constrained conversation, there was a strange comfort. They were together, a family unit again, even if only for a brief, borrowed moment in the magical setting of the Christmas market. Lily's innocent presence was the bridge, connecting two people who had once been inseparable but had since drifted so far apart. Her chatter, her excitement, filled the silences that might otherwise have become too heavy. For her, they were doing this, putting on a united front, hoping to preserve a little bit of her childhood magic. As they continued their slow stroll through the market, the initial awkwardness between Michael and Sarah began to soften, imperceptibly at first. Lily was their guide, her boundless energy pulling them from one delightful sight to the next. They watched her squeal with delight as a street performer juggled glowing pins, her face alight with pure wonder. Later, she dragged them to a carousel, insisting they stand close as she rode a painted pony, waving wildly with every pass. Michael found himself stealing glances at Sarah. He noticed the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when Lily laughed, the gentle curve of her smile as she pointed out a particularly festive stall. These were familiar gestures, ingrained in his memory, yet now they seemed fresh, seen through a new lens. He caught her looking at him too, a momentary connection that held more than just politeness. There was a shared understanding in those fleeting looks, a mutual appreciation for their daughter's happiness that transcended their past hurts. The festive sounds and sights of the market worked their magic, weaving a spell around the little trio. The crisp air, the scent of roasting chestnuts, the shimmering lights, it all contributed to a growing sense of warmth. It wasn't the fiery passion of their early days, nor the comfortable ease of their marriage, but something different, something gentle and comforting. It was the warmth of shared parenting, of seeing their child thrive, and acknowledging, however silently, that they were still a team in that regard. Michael remembered how they used to enjoy these moments together, before the arguments and the distance had crept in. He recalled the easy laughter, the unspoken communication, the simple joy of being a family. Watching Lily enjoy the market with both of them present, a forgotten comfort began to settle over him. It was a feeling of rightness, of belonging, that he hadn't realized how much he missed. Sarah, too, seemed to relax, her shoulders losing some of their tension. A quiet, almost tender understanding passed between them as Lily pointed excitedly at a large, inflatable snowman, her face glowing. In that shared moment of parental joy, the bitter taste of their past seemed to recede, replaced by a delicate, budding sense of peace. Their stroll led them to a quieter corner of the market, where a stall shimmered with handcrafted glass ornaments. Each piece was a tiny work of art, catching the twinkle of the fairy lights and reflecting them in a dazzling dance. Lily, who had been skipping ahead, suddenly stopped, her eyes wide with awe. She pointed a small finger at a particular ornament, a delicate glass sphere painted with a snowy scene, a cozy little house nestled under a star-filled sky, with 3 tiny figures standing hand in hand outside. "Look, Daddy. Look, Mommy," she whispered, her voice hushed with reverence. "It's like our old house. And that's us." Michael and Sarah leaned in, their heads almost touching, to see what had captivated their daughter. The ornament was indeed beautiful, and in Lily's innocent mind, it perfectly mirrored their past. The 3 tiny figures, though generic, were undeniably them, in her imagination. "It's so pretty," Sarah murmured, a soft smile on her face. "I wish we could have Christmas like that again," Lily said, her voice barely audible, almost a prayer. She looked up at them, her big, hopeful eyes moving from Michael to Sarah. "I wish we could all be happy together again, like the people in the ornament." Her words, spoken with such pure, unadulterated longing, struck Michael and Sarah simultaneously. It was a simple wish, yet it carried the weight of a child's deepest desire. The small, fragile peace that had settled between them shattered, not into conflict, but into a profound, shared sadness. Both Michael and Sarah felt their hearts melt, a painful tenderness blooming in their chests. It was a stark reminder of what their choices had cost, not just them, but their innocent daughter. Michael felt a lump form in his throat. He glanced at Sarah, whose eyes were now glistening, reflecting the tiny lights of the market. He could see the same pain, the same regret, mirrored in her gaze. Lily's wish wasn't a demand or a complaint, it was a heartfelt expression of a longing they both understood, a yearning for a family unit that, in her eyes, was still whole. In that moment, the beautiful ornament became more than just glass and paint, it was a symbol of a dream, a silent plea that resonated deeply within their souls, forcing them to confront the unspoken truth of their separation. Lily's innocent wish had cracked open something vital between Michael and Sarah. After buying the ornament for Lily, a silent promise, perhaps, to honor her wish in some way, they found themselves lingering. Lily, sensing a shift in the air, suddenly remembered she was hungry. "Can I have some more of those yummy nuts, Daddy?" she asked, pointing to a nearby stall. Michael exchanged a look with Sarah. "Go on ahead, sweetie," Sarah said gently. "We'll be right behind you." As Lily skipped off, Michael turned to Sarah, the silence no longer awkward, but heavy with unspoken emotions. "She really misses it, doesn't she?" he said, his voice quiet. Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on Lily's retreating back. "More than I realized. More than either of us let on, I think." She turned to face him fully, her eyes earnest. "Michael, I'm so sorry. For everything. For my part in why we ended up here." He felt a surprising relief at her words, a weight he hadn't known he was carrying lifting slightly. "It wasn't just you, Sarah. I made my share of mistakes too. I was so wrapped up in work, I stopped noticing. Well, us." A pang of genuine regret hit him. "I miss it sometimes. The easy way we used to be. The family we were." Sarah's eyes met his, and he saw a mirroring of his own longing. "Me too," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "More than sometimes. Every day, especially around holidays. It's not just the big moments, it's the little things. The quiet mornings, planning Lily's birthday, even just the way you used to hum off-key while making coffee." A small, sad smile touched her lips. "We really messed up, didn't we?" "We did," Michael agreed, a sense of honesty washing over them both. There was no blame, no anger, just a shared sorrow for what had been lost. They talked, not in shouting matches or bitter accusations, but with a raw vulnerability that had been absent from their relationship for years. They spoke of the pressures, the misunderstandings, the slow drift apart, acknowledging their individual faults without excusing them. It was a conversation long overdue, a painful but necessary unraveling of old wounds. "I miss our family unit," Sarah said again, her voice thick with emotion. "I miss having you there, for Lily, for me. Not just as her father, but as my partner in all of it." Michael nodded, his throat tight. He understood completely. He missed the feeling of a complete team, the shared purpose, the comfort of knowing someone had his back, not just for Lily, but for the life they had built together. The festive market, once a backdrop for their awkwardness, now bore witness to their fragile, heartfelt confession. The raw honesty of their conversation had left Michael and Sarah feeling lighter, yet also acutely aware of the delicate path they were on. Lily soon returned, her mouth sticky with candied nuts, reminding them of the very reason they were having this conversation. They couldn't ignore her heartfelt wish. "Lily," Michael began, kneeling down to her level, "Mommy and I were just talking. How would you feel if we tried to celebrate Christmas Eve together this year?" He watched her face carefully, searching for a reaction. Lily's eyes, usually so bright, widened even further, reflecting the market lights like tiny stars. A slow, joyful smile spread across her face, transforming her entire expression. "Really? All of us? With the special pajamas and the hot cocoa?" "Yes, sweetie," Sarah added, her voice soft. "Just like we used to. We could make cookies, and read stories by the fire." She glanced at Michael, a question in her eyes. "As friends, of course," she quickly clarified, as much for herself as for him. Michael understood. It was a step, a small, cautious step, but a significant one nonetheless. "Yes, as friends," he echoed, a warmth spreading through him. "We'll do it for you, kiddo." The decision felt both right and incredibly brave. It wasn't about reigniting a romance, not yet anyway. It was about giving Lily a glimpse of the family she so desperately missed, a chance to experience the magic of the holidays with both her parents present. It was about healing, about putting their child's emotional well-being first. They discussed the logistics briefly, agreeing on Sarah's house since it was more set up for Christmas traditions. As they walked Lily back to Michael's car, the atmosphere had completely changed. The awkwardness had been replaced by a fragile sense of purpose, a shared mission. They were still two separate people, navigating their own lives, but for one evening, they would come together, united by their love for Lily. Michael felt a flutter of nervousness, but also a flicker of hope. It was a big leap, inviting Sarah back into his home, or rather, stepping back into hers, even if just for a few hours. But seeing Lily's beaming face, her excitement bubbling over at the prospect, made every doubt vanish. This was for her, and perhaps, in a way, for them too. It was a chance to rebuild, starting with a single, precious Christmas Eve. The day of Christmas Eve arrived, bringing with it a flurry of nervous anticipation for Michael. He pulled up to Sarah's house, Lily practically vibrating with excitement in the back seat. The house glowed with warm lights, and he could hear faint Christmas music playing even before he reached the door. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. Sarah opened the door, a welcoming smile on her face, dressed in a cozy holiday sweater. "Michael, Lily. Come in, it's freezing out there." The moment they stepped inside, it felt surprisingly natural. The familiar scent of pine and Sarah's baking filled the air, instantly transporting Michael back to a time when this was his home too. Lily, released from her car seat, dashed straight for the Christmas tree, which was even more beautifully decorated than he remembered. "Daddy, look! Mommy put the star on top," she exclaimed, pointing a tiny finger. They fell into old traditions with an ease that surprised them both. Michael helped Lily hang the last few ornaments, his hands brushing Sarah's as they reached for a sparkly bauble. They made hot cocoa with extra marshmallows, just the way Lily loved it, and Michael found himself laughing at Sarah's playful attempts to steal a marshmallow when Lily wasn't looking. Later, they gathered around the fireplace, where Sarah had a cozy fire crackling. Michael read Lily a Christmas story, his voice a comforting rumble that filled the living room. Sarah sat beside them, a soft blanket draped over her, her gaze lingering on Michael as he brought the story to life. There was no awkwardness, no forced conversation. It was just easy, comfortable, and full of genuine joy. Lily, wrapped in her special Christmas pajamas, eventually drifted off to sleep on the rug, curled up between her parents. Michael and Sarah exchanged a tender smile, a silent acknowledgement of the magic they had created for her. The laughter and warmth of the evening felt authentic, not forced. It was as if no time had passed, as if the pain and separation of the last few years had simply melted away in the glow of the Christmas lights. For a few precious hours, they were a family again, and it felt wonderfully, surprisingly right. After tucking Lily into bed, her little face still flushed with Christmas joy, Michael and Sarah returned to the living room. The fire still crackled softly, casting a warm, dancing glow across the room. The only sound was the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock and the distant, muffled sounds of the quiet neighborhood. They sat on the sofa, not too close, not too far apart, just comfortable. The easy silence was a stark contrast to the strained conversations they'd grown accustomed to. Michael looked at Sarah, truly looked at her, and saw not just the mother of his child, but the woman he had once loved with all his heart. Her hair was a little messier from the evening's activities, her eyes tired but shining with a contentment he hadn't seen in them for years. "She was so happy tonight," Sarah whispered, breaking the silence, her voice soft and full of emotion. "She was," Michael agreed, his gaze still fixed on her. "We did good, Sarah." She turned her head to meet his eyes, and in that quiet moment, something profound shifted. The carefully constructed walls, the labels of ex-husband and ex-wife, seemed to dissolve. What remained was a familiar comfort, a deep understanding that only two people who had once shared everything could possess. He saw the same warmth he felt reflected in her eyes, a recognition of a connection that had stubbornly survived the storm of their divorce. I missed this," Michael admitted, his voice a little rougher than he intended. He just led vaguely at the room, the atmosphere, the feeling between them. Us. Like this. Sarah took a slow breath. Me too, Michael. More than I let myself believe. She paused, then added, almost hesitantly, it made me realize. Maybe what we had, what we built, isn't completely gone. Maybe it was just sleeping. His heart gave a hopeful leap. It was a thought he'd been afraid to even entertain, but hearing it from her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes, made it real. The love they had shared, the foundation of their family, had been buried under layers of hurt and resentment. But tonight, beneath the glow of the Christmas tree, fanned by Lily's innocent wishes and their shared laughter, a fragile ember had begun to glow. It wasn't the roaring fire it once was, but it was there, undeniable, hinting at a possibility they both thought was lost forever. The delicate thought, voiced by Sarah, hung in the air between them, shimmering like the last embers of the fire. Sleeping, Michael repeated softly, testing the word. It felt right. Not dead, not gone, just slumbering. The idea, once unthinkable, now felt like a fragile, beautiful possibility. What do you think we should do? Sarah asked, her voice quiet but steady, meeting his gaze. Michael knew this was a pivotal moment. They could retreat, pretend this evening was just a one-off for Lily, or they could dare to explore the unexpected warmth that had blossomed. I think, he began, choosing his words carefully, we should try. For Lily, yes, but for us too. To see if there's still something worth mending. A small, hopeful smile touched Sarah's lips. I'd like that, Michael. I really would. She shifted on the sofa, turning more fully towards him. It won't be easy. There's a lot of old hurt, a lot of reasons why we ended up where we did. I know, he agreed, the realistic understanding grounding their soaring hopes. But tonight felt different. It felt like a glimpse of what could be, if we both really tried. He extended a hand, not to touch, but as an offering, a gesture of partnership. We start small. More family dinners, maybe a trip to the park, just the three of us. See how it feels. Sarah looked at his outstretched hand, then back at his eyes, and a decision solidified within her. She nodded, her expression earnest. Agreed. Let's explore it. Let's see if we can find our way back, not necessarily to where we were, but to something new, something better. The agreement felt like a quiet promise, a commitment to a hopeful future. There were no grand declarations, no immediate solutions, just a shared willingness to try. It was a leap of faith, built on the rekindled spark and the undeniable love for their daughter. They spent a little longer talking, mapping out tentative plans for the coming weeks, their voices low and filled with a newfound collaborative spirit. The idea of mending their broken relationship, once dismissed as impossible, now held a fragile, compelling allure. The thought of Lily waking up to more mornings where both her parents were present, working together, stirred a deep joy in both their hearts. As Michael finally stepped out of Sarah's house into the crisp Christmas night, a feeling he hadn't known in years settled over him, hope. It wasn't the frantic, desperate hope of a lonely man, but a quiet, steady warmth that promised new possibilities. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, and the cold air felt invigorating, not chilling. He carried not just the lingering scent of pine and Sarah's baking, but the memory of shared laughter, comfortable silences, and a rediscovered connection. The next morning, Lily woke up to find her parents chatting easily over coffee in the kitchen, a sight that made her eyes widen with surprise and then crinkle into a joyful smile. The ornament from the market, with its tiny family, hung proudly on Sarah's tree, a silent witness to the evening's transformation. It was a simple breakfast, but it tasted sweeter than any they'd had in a long time, filled with a lightness that had been absent from their lives for too long. Over the next few weeks and months, Michael and Sarah kept their promise. There were more family dinners, trips to the park, and even movie nights at one another's homes. Each gathering was a small step, sometimes awkward, sometimes easy, but always filled with the underlying intention to heal. They learned to talk again, truly talk, about their feelings, their fears, and their hopes for Lily. The road was long, and there were bumps along the way, moments of doubt and old habits resurfacing. But each time, they remembered the feeling of that Christmas Eve, the innocent wish of their daughter, and the fragile spark that had reignited between them. Their story was far from a fairy tale ending, but it was a beginning. A new beginning, built not on erasing the past, but on understanding it, forgiving it, and daring to hope for a different future. It was a testament to the power of a child's love, the magic of a Christmas market, and the enduring truth that sometimes, what you thought was lost forever, was merely waiting for the right moment to be found again. Their family, though redefined, was slowly, carefully, starting to feel whole once more, all thanks to a simple wish made under the twinkling lights of Christmas.